From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron Judge's new agent, also known as Jamie Hickson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Rosen, and I am a very happy Jets fan.
Well, you should be. We're very happy that you could join us, first of all. Second of all, you know all the particulars. You can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, and Snapchat. And I have to ask a question. You ever seen that TV show Stranger Things on Netflix?
Yes.
Because that's exactly what's been going on in the NFL the first 4 weeks of the season. We have seen some of the strangest things that have happened with some of these NFL teams. Who saw the Jets being the better football team here in this city than the Giants?
Yeah, they were supposed to tank this season, and even me, yours truly, thought that this was a deliberate tank job. But they're 2-2 right now. But you also, people are going to end up saying, well, look at the last two opponents you played. You played a Miami Dolphins team that couldn't run the ball at all, and the fact that you were able to get enough good passes and win 26. And you were playing a Jacksonville team that is just coming off some adrenaline from London last week and won 44-7. So, and the fact that the Jets are playing Cleveland, so if they win that, you know you're going to have people criticizing the Jets for those wins, saying you didn't play New England, you didn't play Pittsburgh or Kansas City, you didn't play the hard team. So, good that you won these games, but don't celebrate. At the same time, the old expression, a win is a win is a win no matter how you get a win.
You know, they can only play whatever team is on their schedule, first of all. Second of all, Jet fans should be grateful for how their team has started the first quarter of this season.
At home, though. Away, on the other hand, they lost.
Yeah, they were basically outplayed the first two road games. The last couple of home games, they've taken advantage of their home field advantage, for lack of a better word. But you know what? Jet fans should be so grateful for how this team has been able to rally the last couple of weeks. And let me tell you, these are professional football players that we're dealing with here. Just because everybody expected them to tank doesn't mean that they were going to comply. These are proud players, proud athletes. They're out to win. They couldn't care less about a number one draft pick next season. Let them worry about that when the regular season ends.
What I liked yesterday was seeing Elijah McGuire on a third quarter 69-yard touchdown run. This guy is a 6th-round pick who came from the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns of the Sun Belt Conference. And he made his debut due, in fact, to Matt Forte having turf toe and not being able to play this week. So, therefore, he got a lot of touches along with Bilal Powell, including that 75-yard run. You know, this is the first time ever in franchise history where two running backs have scored 60 or more yards in the same game. That's just – and Kevin Mawa, one of the greatest centers in NFL history and in Jets history, was inducted into the Ring of Honor at halftime. In fact, the fans who went to the game got these complimentary 68 rally towels.
Kevin was such an outstanding offensive lineman for the Jets for almost a decade. You know, for all of the ridicule that this franchise has received, the majority of it rightfully so, give them credit for being able to find those really, really good players at that one position where they've been able to thrive. Going back years, we've seen guys like Joe Fields and Jim Sweeney.
Don Maynard.
Well, I'm talking about the center position only.
All right.
Fields, Sweeney, Mawai. Most recently, they had Nick Mangold. The Jets have been able to find that one really brilliant guy to do the snaps at center and basically lead traffic for his quarterback and his running game. And Kevin Mawai was that guy for so many years. First for Vinny Testaverde, and then after that for Chad Pennington.
And then he went to the Titans after he left the Jets. But in most of his years were with the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he was a brilliant member of the NFL Players Association. He was the president of the Players Association.
That's exactly right. And he wound up doing a lot of great things for the Players Union. And for that, the guys that were members of the union when he was running the show should be grateful for all he did for them. Now, speaking of the center position, shouldn't we pay homage to the current center and the rest of that Jet offensive line for opening up those holes for Elijah McGuire and Bilal Powell for scoring those long touchdown runs?
Oh, without a doubt. But what killed me was they had a 20-10 lead, and they get the ball on a 40-yard pass from Josh McCown to Robbie Anderson. They're at the Jags' 14-yard line. McCown decides on this boneheaded move with this backward pass to Bilal Powell, who, by the way, Bilal wasn't even ready for. Hits off his shoulders. It's a backwards pass fumble recovered by Miles Jack. That name's familiar to you. He was the former UCLA Bruin linebacker and running back and kick return. This guy did everything at UCLA as well. Mm-hmm. He picks up the ball, goes for an 81-yard score. No whistle is called. The touchdown is held. It's 2017 with 10:20 left. Then, with 3:19 left in the game, all the Jets had to do was get 3 first downs, and the game would have been sealed. But what happens? McCown decides to throw another boneheaded throw towards A.J. Bowie, the free agent pickup that Jags got in the offseason, who used to be with the Houston Texans. Gets an interception. That's A.J. Bowie's second interception in as many weeks, and he gets it to the Jets' 35. Leonard Fournette takes a short pass going for what should have been the go-ahead game-winning touchdown run by Jacksonville for 23 yards. The Jets should be kissing the feet of Aurelius Ben for that stupid holding call. It had not been for the holding call, the Jets would have lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank, they would have lost the game had not been for Ben's holding call. But it went 2017. Then Coney Ealy had his second batted pass of the day. They had to settle for a Jason Myers 22-yard field goal, the Jaguars, with about 46 seconds left. Then we go into overtime. The Jets are able to get the ball basically after, on 4th and 5 from the Jets' 25, Lachlan Edwards boomed the 70-yard punt, misjudged by Marquise Lee. Then Jacksonville gets called for an illegal block in the backfield, so they put the ball at their own 3-yard line. So the Jaguars pretty much hurt themselves with some big penalties. Then the Jags go 3 and out. Paul Posluszny gets called for unsportsmanlike conduct call for as Dylan Donahue went down the Jaguars' island with an elbow injury. So it puts the ball on the Jaguars' 25 for the Jets. 2 short 1-yard runs. McCown spikes the ball. Canzaro comes up, gets the game-winning field goal. 28 seconds to go, which could have been a tie. They win 23-20.
That was the last thing that either side wanted, was to have a tie. And this is why I say go with the college rules for overtime. That way you will not have any more ties. But bottom line is the Jets won the game. They have the Browns coming up. As great as a win as it was yesterday, need I say trap game? The Jets have the winless Browns coming up.
And they're coming off a terrible 31-7 performance in Cleveland.
At home to the in-state rival Bengals, who kicked their teeth in one way after another. And once again, Deshaun Kaiser continues to make his rookie mistakes.
Oh, it's not even just that. They were held to 215 total yards. That's how embarrassing it was. The turnovers, the bad mistakes. The only bit of offense they had was Duke Johnson, who had 14 total touches, 9 of which were receiving, 4 catching. They need to get Duke Johnson more involved in their offensive play calling. And Njoku as well should have been a little more involved or should have had some better plays. Overall, though, you got to give Andy Dolan credit for coming back this week for the offense. I think Bill Lazor has improved that Bengals offense since he took over for Ken Zampese. So the Bengals right now are on the right track.
Yeah.
Let's hope they can continue. As for the Browns, 1-19 for Hugh Jackson in the 2 years he's been their head coach at the moment.
Wow.
It's getting worse. And now, yes, this could be a trap game for the Jets because you got a desperate Browns team that could face the prospect of an 0-5 season in their home stadium. But the other thing you have to keep in mind, too, they're missing a lot of key defense players. Jamie Collins got hurt. Dan Shelton, calf injury. And still, yet to make his debut has been Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Right now, he might have been able to play this past week. Last week, he was possibly going to play. They still sat him out. They're trying to, ease him in. But if he decides to play this week and he shows the type of intensity that he had at Texas A&M, God help Josh McCown and that offensive line.
Yeah.
Because he's a scary dude to have to face down.
Now, whereas the Jets came up with another big win 2 weeks in a row, the Giants continue to defy all logic. Again, who saw this happening? The Jets being the better football team in New York than the Giants. No one did.
Nobody did.
And
it
only seems to go from bad to worse for them because once again, they wound up falling behind the 8 ball. They wound up falling behind by 10 points. Second straight week, they wind up getting a lead. And terrible, terrible execution on offense winds up costing them the game.
I know. What killed me was the fact they had a 23-22 lead with on the Rhett Ellison 2-yard touchdown round with 3:16 remaining. And the 2-point conversion was disallowed because the receiver stepped out of bounds. Odell made one of the dumbest moves in football history. Well, it's not it's football 101. You don't step out of bounds and then come back in bounds. You are
to touch the football.
You're considered an ineligible receiver at that point in time. I'm surprised that Odell doesn't realize this, or is he too busy trying to think of the next cool, stupid maneuver or dance move that's going to cost his team 15 yards. I don't know what was going through his head, but he really needs to get his head out of his keister right now and start playing for his team. Otherwise, there's going to come a point where management is going to get sick and tired of this dog and pony show. And
do you know that some reporter actually had the audacity to ask Ben McAdoo after the game about the Giants' playoff hopes? Right, the way this team is playing right now, they are not deserving of being a playoff team. They should just concentrate on San Diego this coming Sunday before anything else.
Oh, by the way, who got the game-winning field goal for the Buccaneers? You Jet fans will remember him. His name is, Nick Folk?
Yep, Nick Folk.
34 yards with time expiring. They win 25-23. Guess who the Bucs got to play on Thursday night?
If I'm not mistaken, I think they have New England.
In New England, a team coming off a bad loss at home.
Yep.
I feel bad for this Bucs team. They're going to face a pissed-off squad, Patriot squad.
The 2 times that the Patriots have lost, a lot of weaknesses were exposed, especially in the Patriots secondary. As if you ask Devin McCourty, the secondary's been the weak link for them.
Yep, 33-30. This defense is one of the worst in the league. They give up 31 points a game, over 400 yards. So this is why Tom Brady has to score as many points as his defense gives up every week, it seems like. And that's not fair to put that on him to do that every single week. If his defense, especially Matt Patricia, who I still think is one of the most underrated coordinators in the league, this is not one of his best years for his defense. And on top of all this, the Giants have the winless Chargers, who, again, lost 26-24 to the Eagles yesterday. Jake Elliott had 4 field goals in that game.
Well, as far as that game goes, you should have heard the fans that were at the Home Depot Center yesterday. There were a lot of "Let's Go Eagles" chants that were in Carson. Yeah, in the StubHub Center, I should say. A lot of "Let's Go Eagles" chants were in the StubHub Center in Carson, California yesterday. That should just prove to everyone that not everyone has embraced the Chargers' move to L.A. Now, as far as we mentioned how the Jets won and the Patriots lost, what about Buffalo going into Atlanta to beat the Falcons? And if you ask LaShawn McCoy, everybody counted them out. I certainly counted them out because, quite frankly, I didn't think that they had the quarterback play to try and beat the Falcons. But you brought up something really interesting before the show, and that's the fact that Matt Ryan's been a turnover waiting to happen. 5 turnovers in the last 2 games? That's not how you win games, folks.
Last week, they barely won I mean, barely won in Detroit, and they were lucky that the Golden Tate touchdown didn't count. Honestly, it should have counted in my eyes. But the 3 interceptions he had in the second half in that game could have cost them, as well as Desmond Trufant's penalty in that game. This week, on the other hand, Stephen Hauschka getting the tie-breaking 56-yard field goal and the 55-yarder, 2 50-plus yard field goals with less than 5 minutes to go. And then the Tre'Davious White fumble recovery, 52-yard fumble recovery touchdown in the third quarter. That didn't help. Jerry Hughes basically hitting Matt Ryan's arm on that play. That did not help whatsoever. And those 2 interceptions by Micah Hyde, who's really another underrated player, if you will, in the NFL. So Matt Ryan, the Atlanta rush, though, was much better. They had more offensive yards. That's the thing that kills me. But the fact that they lost Julio Jones to a hip flexor.
Yeah.
How bad is that going to?
Well, fortunately, he's the injury is not considered completely serious. In fact, I think from what I understand, he's supposed to be a game-time decision for next weekend.
So the Bills are first in the AFC East, and the Rams are first in the NFC West. These are 2 teams who for years were the laughing stocks of the NFL. Especially the Bills, who still hold the longest active drought missing the playoffs, 17 years. And
this year could be 18 if they suddenly self-destruct the way they usually do down the stretch. Speaking of the Falcons, you mentioned Julio Jones. Well, Mohamed Sanu is definitely going to be missing some time because he hurt his hamstring. He's missing between 2 and 3 weeks.
Which is really devastating because those 2 are big table setters. Because especially when you're a defensive coordinator and you got to go up against Matt Ryan, you have to worry about who he's going to throw. You got, of course, your home run threat in Julio Jones, the guy who they traded up years ago to get out of Alabama, who's been the sensation of that wide receiving core. Then Mohamed Sanu, who started his career with the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think 2 years ago he signed in the offseason with the Falcons, has been another great threat, especially a good possession receiver, and just really outstanding player. And now I think Taylor Gabriel is going to probably be the main part of their offense going to the weeks ahead. He's going to really have to step up for Atlanta to end this bleeding. Now, the Lions won a very close game, 14-7.
Yeah, 14-7. The Lions wound up winning. Good way for them to bounce back after having a game practically stolen from them by replay. But at the same time, the Vikings have suddenly fallen with a really loud thud. Not only are they missing 2 quarterbacks, now Dalvin Cook's going to be gone for the rest of the year because he tore up his knee.
Which is really devastating. This guy was the explosive 3-down back that was going to replace Adrian Peterson, the guy who was going to be the next franchise running back. Now, all the running offense is going to be on Latavius Murray's shoulders. So right there, again, for any fan, not to be a jerk or anything, talking about fantasy after some guy's injury, but if you are a fantasy owner, you might want to get Latavius Murray on the waiver wire this coming week if you got Minnesota. As for Dalvin Cook, this is really sad because he was explosive. You saw half the runs that he made, especially the week before against Tampa Bay. You knew this guy was going to just be outstanding. Now he's done for the year. And Carolina, as I mentioned earlier, defeated New England 33-30. Carolina coming off a humiliating loss at home to New Orleans. So they come back in fashion. Jonathan Stewart had 14 carries, 60 yards. He passed DeAngelo Williams on the all-time rushing yards list in Panthers history. Congratulations, Tim.
Yeah, huge. What a huge win for the Panthers yesterday. I just wish that Cam Newton didn't have to be such a sore winner because he refused to talk to the media after the game.
I know, which is really weird because usually he's a sore loser at times when his team doesn't want to win. You ever seen in the past where he just looks down or he has the shoulder towel over his head?
How about
the 2 penalties?
Yeah. Speaking of shocking upsets, what about what the Rams did to the Cowboys? Could it be that Jared Goff is for real? I mean, I know it's only been 4 weeks, but so far he's gotten off to a pretty decent start. And Todd Gurley has basically
exploded on offense.
Todd Gurley has basically shown why he was worthy of a number one pick 2 years ago. 215 yards of total offense by himself.
And he had the go-ahead catch-and-run 53-yard field goal. And Greg the Leg Zuerlein, career high, 7 field goals. They win 35-30. Outstanding.
Could we be seeing a changing of the guard here in the NFC West? Because for the last few years, it's only been the Seahawks that have represented the NFC West in the playoffs. But now, could it be that the Rams might be ahead of schedule because they were supposed to go through a youth movement, and already they've gotten off to a really good start?
Well, you have to account for the moves they made. Acquiring Sammy Watkins in the offseason was a very smart move right there, and his career feels like it's revitalized already. Todd Gurley, of course, is having probably the breakout season of the century right now. The last 2 weeks, including that Thursday night performance he had last week against the 49ers. And then you got Jared Goff really fitting well in Sean McVay's offensive system. So everything is clicking. And Robert Woods, too, is making some contributions. And the defense being coached by Wade Phillips, that was great right there to bring him on board as defensive coordinator because he was always a great coordinator. And the fact he did it against the very team that let him go after
3.5 years, which, quite frankly,
sweet revenge.
Yeah, sweet revenge for him. Now, as far as that Steelers-Ravens game, looks like the Steelers are rounding themselves into form, whereas the Ravens continue to go up and down, up and down.
What's crazy is, I know, the Ravens, again, the last 2 weeks, 16 total points the last 2 weeks combined.
And once again, it's Le'Veon Bell leading the way, 144 yards rushing.
And 2 interceptions on Joe Flacco. So he's had 4 interceptions in the last 2 weeks, sacked 4 times. His offense. This is really showing the huge loss of Marshall Yanda on that left side. That's a big loss right there. The Ravens are going to be suffering from that loss for the rest of the season. As for the Steelers, I heard yesterday that Antonio Brown got so pissed. He made this great double move off a corner, and he got ignored by Ben Roethlisberger for what could have been a touchdown pass for an incompletion to Le'Veon Bell. He smashed a cooler on the side field. And, Todd Haley, the former Kansas City Chiefs coach, now offensive coordinator for the Steelers, tried to talk some sense in him to calm down. He didn't want to have any of it.
You know how these receivers are. All these receivers act like such divas because they want the ball all the time. But yeah, you have to admit, Big Ben does have to have a little bit better field vision than that. So take it for what it's worth.
But at the end of the day, the fact they got 381 yards total offense, they totally destroyed their opponent. This was not even a close game because typically these types of matchups are determined by either a possession or a field goal. And the fact that this was over before it started, unbelievable for the Ravens.
Yep.
This is just the beginning of and talk about misery loves company.
Oh, brother. Titans and Texans yesterday. First off, the Titans, actually, let me start over again. The Titans may be without, or maybe they will have Marcus Mariota for the upcoming game because he hurt his hamstring. He's basically a day-to-day decision. As for the Texans...
Well, they better hope he's day-to-day because look who they have. Matt Castle.
Yep.
For Chiefs fans or anybody who's had him on his team, he's not the guy who's your leader. Okay, maybe the one exceptional year he had with the Patriots... And I think it was 2012. Other than that, it's been a downhill road for Matt Castle. He's pretty much a journeyman, if that's the right word to call him. Otherwise, this is not the guy. In fact, he was so terrible in Kansas City when he got injured in a 9-6 game against the Ravens. The fans actually cheered for him being injured. Like, when your own fans cheer for you when you're injured, that really tells people you are a crappy quarterback.
Yeah.
Even though that's wrong for any fan to cheer for somebody's injury. I don't condone that at all. But it really tells you how much people think of you.
Well, that's the one side. The other side is the Texans set a franchise scoring record, and it was Deshaun Watson once again leading the way with 4 touchdown passes
and a rushing touchdown. 5 total. He was like Lamar Jackson, except
even though his team lost to the Patriots last week, These last 2 games, they've gotten 90 points total. This shows you how much offensive explosion the Texans could have within the next, I'd say, 3 or 4 weeks, because this team can explode at any time.
They should have started Deshaun Watson week 1 and not Tom Savage. I remember when Bill Bryan was, Tom Savage is my guy. I'm comfortable with him. Yeah, he's your guy who got sacked 6 times in the first half of that devastating week 1 loss to the Jaguars. Now, at least he had the good sense to take him out of the game and put Watson in the second half. Unfortunately, it was too little too late. But you've seen since that, he's really has brought an explosion in this offense. He's had 30-yard touchdown runs. He had a 40-yard touchdown run. This guy has a good throwing arm, too. The way he passed to Will Fuller. By the way, I'm happy Fuller's back from that neck injury. Yeah. So they won 57-14. Congratulations. The 49ers lost to the Cardinals in overtime. The 19-yard pass from Carson Palmer to Larry Fitzgerald. 32 seconds left to set up.
I'm telling you, these guys still have a little something left. Don't be surprised if you see them challenge for a playoff spot down the road. And we already mentioned Eagles and Chargers. More Eagle fans than Charger fans in Carson, California. But the bottom line was Carson Wentz wound up having himself a really solid game.
And LeGarrette Blount, 136 yards, 70 of which were in the 110 in the fourth quarter.
And then came Raiders and Broncos. Not only did the Broncos win yesterday, but Derek Carr unfortunately suffered a spinal fracture. Yeah. So he's going to be out between 2 and 6 weeks, which means E.J. Manuel is going to have to be the starting quarterback for the Raiders in that time.
It has not been a bowl of cherries for this Raiders team the last 2 weeks. The loss on Sunday night to the Redskins, and now this loss to the Broncos. Things are, they won the first 2 games handily. Now they're 2-2. They got to right the ship for the rest of the season. And the Sunday night game that really turned out to be a blowout, 46-18 Seahawks over the Colts.
Yeah, it was actually a well-played game for about almost 3 quarters, because the game was tied at 18, but then the next thing you knew, the Seahawks turned up the defense. They wound up forcing a couple of turnovers from Jacoby Brissett, and the next thing you know, wound up being a 28-point game.
How about Bobby Wagner scooping up that touchdown? And this guy, J.D. McKissick, another rookie who came out of nowhere, made his debut. Considering Chris Carson, unfortunately, the injury was he was bent backwards on his leg. If you watch that replay, it was horrific to watch, and you knew right then and there, and everybody could see on his face, he was pretty much done for the year, and unfortunately, that's the case. He is done for the season.
Whereas in London yesterday morning, the Saints wound up shutting out the Dolphins, and it looks like Drew Brees is starting to round himself back into form.
Well, the defense has given up only 14 points combined in the last 2 weeks, as opposed to what they did in the first 2 weeks. So the defense is getting better in the secondary. On top of that, Drew Brees' arm is great. And Alvin Kamara, who really had a sensational performance, him and Michael Thomas together had 160 combined yards in the second half and 2 touchdowns. My boy Michael Thomas, I got him in fantasy, 8 catches, 89 yards, and a big third quarter touchdown. Kamara was being used a lot. So you know what? This guy is just unbelievable. Out of Toledo? Not Toledo.
You're actually thinking of the kid that's going to be playing tonight for the Chiefs, which is Kareem Hunt. His Chiefs are playing the Redskins in probably one of the more interesting matchups that's going to be taking place.
And we mentioned the battle of the Ohio winless teams. Bengals beat the Browns.
That's not even worth mentioning. I mean, both teams are dreadful. Quite frankly, I really don't see much out of the Bengals for the rest of the year. The Browns are an absolute embarrassment, and let's face facts. It's going to be a millennium before that franchise ever turns anything around.
You mentioned the Monday night game tonight. It's at Arrowhead Stadium, the stadium that, remember 3 years ago, Monday Night Football broke the Guinness record for the loudest decibel of 131, which basically is a sonic boom right there. Going up against the Redskins, this is going to be a very, very loud, very exciting environment. And are you ready, though, for this game? Are you ready for some football?
I'm always ready for some football.
So
I'm ready for some well-played football, though.
I think this game, we had 9 one-possession games. This is going to be the 10th one. I can tell you this is going to be a hotly contested game tonight. This is going to come down to the very end, and I like the field goal kickers. Cairo Santos from Brazil against for the Redskins, whoever it is for the Redskins. I think it's going to come down to field goal kicking, and I'm going with Cairo Santos. Look for him to have a 4 field goal performance. Now, the last week of baseball came and went.
Yeah, and the playoffs are officially set. Let's start in the senior circuit first. The senior circuit's going to have the wild card game between the Diamondbacks and the Rockies, and the winner of that game is going to play the Dodgers. How about that? 2 bitter division rivals. Whoever the wild card is, taking on a Dodger squad that is going to have home field for the entire playoffs into the World Series.
If I'm the Dodgers, though, I do not want to face the Diamondbacks. I think they are a team that's really going to I think they're going to be a nightmare for them to deal with.
And considering the years that Paul Goldschmidt and J.D. Martinez have had for them, you could have maybe Cy Young on the mound, and I think he would be worried about having to face that gruesome twosome.
But look at the Rockies, too. They're nothing to sneeze at either.
Yeah.
They got some heavy hitters as well.
Charlie Blackmon has had an outstanding season at the plate. And, of course, the guy they call Cargo, Carlos Gonzalez.
So right there, I think that wild card match, of course, these games always come down to the 1 run given up by the pitch. So starting pitching is going to be tantamount. It's going to be heavily taken into account in these 2 wild card games, especially tomorrow night. You got Irvin Santana versus Luis Severino, Twins visiting the Yankees, 8 o'clock, ESPN.
Yeah.
So if you're at a bar, you're at your home, glue it into your TV and watch this matchup.
Let's talk a little bit further about how the Yankees season went, because first off,
91 wins.
91 wins. This was supposed to be kind of a rebuilding year for them because they were looking at all of these younger players. When you think about it, the fact that they're going to be playing 1 extra game is enough to be considered being ahead of schedule as far as having a competitive team is concerned.
I'll tell you, had the Astros won on Saturday, and if the Yankees would have won yesterday,
then the Yankees would have had to play the Astros.
Yeah, no, would have had to play the Red Sox today. Would have been a 1-game playoff today.
Well,
for the AL East.
It is what it is, though, because the Yankees, whether they're the division champion or the wild card, they still have to win their games. But now they've got the wild card game, and they have to go up against a really good pitcher, Irvin Santana, who's had the Yankees' number going back to his Angels days. Why, you might ask? Because he's got the sinking fastball that just befuddles a lot of the hitters. You think it's coming right down the middle, and then the next thing you know, the bottom falls out. So the Yankees really have to exercise some patience at the plate if they want to try and get to the divisional round. And they've beaten Santana 1 time already. So they got to look at the game video of that last performance against him and try and use that. And knowing how Santana is, he's going to look at the same game film and probably look for some adjustments to make.
Especially when you got the heart of the order coming up with Gary Sanchez and Aaron Judge right there. So you got those 2 alone are the nasty heavy hitters. And then you got, of course, Didi Gregorius in that 5th spot right there. You got Hicks as well. That could surprise some people.
Aaron Hicks coming back from injury was huge for them because not only has he been able to hit the ball a little bit better, he's provided tremendous defense in the outfield.
What kills me, though, is Greg Bird. He's a good hitter. He's a terrible base runner. That's the thing. He's really got to improve his base running for this postseason run for sure.
A decent defensive first baseman, though. You give him 1 whole season, he could probably reach maybe 30 to 35 home runs in a year, because when you think about it, he barely played half the season this year. I think he only appeared in about 70 games for the year, and somehow he was able to reach quite a respectable home run number for such a short time.
And here's the surprise of the year, though. Ever since CC came off the DL on August 23rd, he's gone 5-0. Since that time, with a 2.13 ERA. So and then Tanaka this past Friday had one of the best outings of his whole career. He goes 5 innings, striking out 15, giving up only 4 hits, no runs at all, and no walks.
And for the record, Let me correct myself. Greg Bird actually played only 48 games this season after missing all of last season, and he played 46 games in 2015. Now, as far as the rest of the American League playoffs go, we know that the winner of Yankees and Twins is going to face the Indians, and the Red Sox are going to play the Astros, who they just faced in a 4-game series over the weekend.
So at least there's some familiarity, Yeah, but as they say, familiarity breeds contempt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And going back to that Yankee Twins game, Miguel Sano, who's been hurt, he's only going to be able to come off the bench for tomorrow night's game. He's not going to be able to start. So look for him to be used as a pinch hitter if things get really, really tight.
Between the Astros and the Red Sox, I'm going to be honest. I'm still going to go with the Red Sox. I think they're the more complete team, especially hitting wise. But the pitching combination they have for Dallas, especially you got Dallas Keuchel.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be the first one, I think, going up against Drew Pomeranz.
Yeah.
Drew Pomeranz has had 15 wins on the year. Unbelievable season that he's had. Probably a Cy Young candidate for sure in the American League. But then you got some of the hitters like Mookie Betts, and Mill Brooks and all the other guys. And, of course, the man from from Curacao. So you got some really good hitters on that Red Sox team. I think they're going to be explosive. I think they're going to come out swinging, especially even if it's in Houston. I'm going with the Red Sox to win that series in 4 games. I'm going with the Yankees to just pull it off by an Aaron Judge homer tomorrow night against the Twins.
Yankee fans will only hope.
And I think and then them facing Cleveland, I'll be honest, I think that's going to go to 5 games, and that's going to go extra innings, and it could go either way for me. That's how tight of a contentious series. Because let's not forget, the last time they played the Indians, they got swept in that series. Ever since, they've won almost every series up until the Toronto series the week before the last week of the season. So they've had some good luck with them, but Cleveland somehow had the Yankees number the last time. So, but if it happens to be the Twins that emerge victorious, which of course us New Yorkers don't want that to be the case, but if it is the Twins, they could provide just as tough a matchup for the Indians as the Yankees could. So either way, the Indians are not going to be sleeping well no matter who they have to face.
Yeah, they're going to treat each opponent the same way. If it just so happens to be the Twins, it'll make for a nice, juicy series since they're Central Division rivals. But Yankees and Indians goes back more than a century. There's a lot of history between those two franchises.
Especially in the postseason. You look at the 97 year.
In 1997, yeah.
The ALCS, that was a very contentious year.
Yeah, that was the Sandy Alomar series when Alomar wound up hitting a game-tying home run off Mariano Rivera in Game 4, and they wound up winning it in the 9th inning of Game 4. They won the series. But then the following year, Yankees wound up winning the pennant over the Indians in 6 games, and then came 2007 when the Indians beat the Yankees in a 4-game division series.
Remember David Justice in the 97 series? He was who years later would end up being a Yankee at the end of his career.
Mm-hmm. That was basically, I'm not sure if it was that year or the year before. Actually, I think it might have been that year where Justice made his infamous Uzi comment about the Yankee fans.
I know, and then later on, the Indians would go on to lose the World Series to then Florida Marlins.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marlins, that would be the first of their 2 World Series championships in a 6-year span. Mm-hmm. As we remember, 2003, the year of the Steve Bartman incident.
Yep. A lot of people are counting out the Cubs for some reason in this year's playoffs.
I know.
I still think that the Cubs have plenty left to try and make a really big run in this postseason. They have the Nationals.
But they barely clinched their division. That's the thing. They just barely clinched the NL Central, and you have to account for the fact that the Cardinals just fell apart in the second half.
Yeah, but now the Cubs are going up against the Nationals team, which has been sublime in the regular season, but subliminal in the postseason. They have never won a playoff series before, either in Montreal or in the nation's capital. Somewhere down the line, they're due to win a playoff series. Is it going to be this year?
Yes.
I just don't know.
Yes. Straight in straight games.
If they're going to have to do this without Max Scherzer because, unfortunately, he's hurt, and there's a strong possibility they may not be able to have him for this series.
Which would be devastating, but something tells me I think the depth, the hitting on this team, we got Ryan Zimmerman, and I believe they got
Ryan Zimmerman, Bryce Harper, who's had an outstanding season. Howie Kendrick also has been an amazing
addition.
Trade pickup for them.
Daniel Murphy,
who continues to make Met fans cry in their beer.
So right there, you do have a good array of hitters.
Trey Turner also, who's a really good shortstop and a good offensive shortstop as well.
And the guy looks like he's from the cast of
Jason Worth,
Yep.
A guy who, by the way, is in his walk year of his 7-year, $140 million contract that he signed all those years ago.
Doesn't he look like the guy from Deliverance or Roadhouse? But anyway,
he looks like a mountain man.
But getting beyond that point, he ever since he got that big payday from the Nationals, this year he didn't play so many games. He had an injury, of course, that took him out for some months, but he is back right now at the right possible time, so he'll provide much needed power in the outfield position, or maybe as a DH if they so choose to. No, not as a DH because it's National League, but I think overall the Nationals will win the series in straight games, in 3 games, sweeping the Cubs. But as for the team that wins the National League series, because I think it will be the Diamondbacks who end up winning that game against Colorado, Diamondbacks versus Dodgers, I think the Diamondbacks will actually win. I think the Dodgers have had a second-half meltdown.
Yeah, the 11-game losing streak that they had really, really set them backwards. Fortunately, they were able to bounce back just a little bit down the stretch to not only win the West, but also to feel a little bit better about themselves going into the postseason. I'm a little worried about the pitching staff, though, specifically Clayton Kershaw. He's been a walking medical disaster, if you ask me. It seems like his back has been bothering him time after time again. Is he going to be 100%? For one start in this series, much less 2, because that's what he's going to be called upon to do. Possibly do 2 starts in this series.
He's a choke artist in the playoffs. If you look at his career record in the postseason, he has never won a single playoff game in a Dodgers uniform. So right there, that tells you something. Especially,
amazing.
You look at the Mets series too when they played the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
Choked in that game.
Yeah.
Choked against the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
He chokes in the postseason.
And then came last year against the Cubs.
But yet, in the regular season, it always baffles me. This guy can get you 15, 20 wins, but yet he can't get a single win in the postseason. So he has to overcome that postseason misery, if you will, if he wants to help the Dodgers get over the playoff hump this year and get their first world title since 87, sorry.
Now, whereas we already know what teams are going to make the playoffs, there's still the issue of the team that did not, and that's the Mets. They finished the season with 71 wins, and a long list, a list that's about as long as all of the paperwork that's on Eric's table. There was one guy after another that could not stay off the disabled list this season, and because their season practically fell with a loud thud, they had to auction off a lot of their best players. Jay Bruce, Curtis Granderson, Lucas Duda, Addison Reed, Rene Rivera, Curtis Granderson all wound up getting either traded or released, and so did Neil Walker.
But then the injuries, too, that didn't help, especially when you lost Syndergaard for the majority of the season. Harvey, of course, having yet another injury. And then the only guy that had any solid credentials on the season was Jacob deGrom.
Jacob deGrom was their best pitcher this year.
He was the ace.
And when you think about it, you know who were the second and third best pitchers that the Mets had?
Seth Lugo.
Robert Gesellman and Seth Lugo.
Yep.
And ever since he got back from the disabled list, Matt Harvey has been a shell of his former self. The only saving grace is that once Noah Syndergaard got back from the disabled list and pitched 3 total innings, at least he was able to show off the power in his fastball. He clocked 100 miles an hour in his start yesterday in Philly to wrap up the season. So there's a strong possibility he might be available full-time for them next year. But, and this is a big but, there's still the issue of who's going to make up the entire starting rotation because, quite frankly, we don't know who's going to be healthy or who's even going to be brought back.
Here's an idea for the Wilpons and for you, Wilpon family, to stop being the cheapskates that you naturally are. Break open the damn checkbook and start to go out and shop for some pitchers in the offseason. I really mean it. You guys have to make a splash in the offseason and get a big-name arm to help this rotation. Otherwise, you basically are doing a major, major disservice to this organization. And you also need to get some infield help, especially a permanent third base player. And on top of that, you got to let Matt Harvey go. It's not working out. It's a failed marriage. They need to just end this divorce and basically move on to the next person.
You're on the right track, though. They do have to do something about the pitching staff. But when you think about it, with DeGrom and Gesellman and Lugo, a healthy Steven Matz, a healthy Matt Harvey.
Not going to cut it. Not going to cut it with these guys. Sorry. They need to get a big-name arm besides
they do need an
Syndergaard.
arm, but I'm thinking maybe they need an arm for the bullpen because Jody Familia just got back from the disabled list, and I'm holding out hope that he's going to be 100% by spring training. So you use Jody Familia, maybe Jerry Blevins,
Hansel Robles.
maybe the kid that they got from the Marlins, AJ Ramos. If I'm the Mets, I would cut my losses with Hansel Robles. He has been an embarrassment on the mound. He doesn't listen to instruction, first and foremost. He would look great one inning and then dreadful the next. He has been a frustrating reliever to watch for Met fans this year. So if I'm the Mets, I would add maybe 2 or 3 extra relievers. Most importantly, get a slugger. You cannot try and win with only Michael Conforto. Besides, he's got a major shoulder injury. There's no guarantee he's going to be 100% by spring training either.
I don't think he's even going to be able to play next year with the injury this bad. I'll be honest. Who knows if he'll even be able to play by, say, August next year?
There's also the issue of first base. Are they going to go with Dominic Smith or are they going to go with somebody else? Because even though Dominic Smith had a really good September and he finished with 6 home runs in the month of September, his defense looks really bad. He can't stop ground balls. He has no clue how to have the proper range. I mean, just yesterday, there was a ground ball that was hit to the pitcher. He was nowhere near the bag.
Which is baseball 101.
Baseball 101. You've got to learn how to play first base. And that was supposed to be his strength coming out of the minor leagues. He has no clue.
Especially situational baseball. As you know, if the pitcher gets the ground ball, the first baseman's supposed to get to his bag to receive the throw from the pitcher to get the out. That's baseball 101. Otherwise, if it's the reverse, where you're basically very far out getting the ground ball, you have to toss it to the pitcher.
Well, there's another question to ask. What's going to be of Ahmed Rosario? Is he going to be the everyday shortstop, or are they going to go elsewhere?
I think they're going to keep him in the shortstop
And
position.
what's going to be of Asdrubal Cabrera, who is in the who actually has an option year on his contract for next year? Is he going to be brought back so he can give the Mets some infield depth, or is he going to be let go so he can try and chase a championship someplace else?
I think he'll be somewhere else by next year. I don't think he's going to be on the Mets.
And what's going to be of Jose Reyes, too?
I think he's pretty much at the tail end of his career. He might get a 1-year ceremonial contract, maybe, but with an
Keep
option.
in mind, Reyes hit the ball pretty well the last month of the season, but he's 34 years old, and he's not necessarily the most durable guy that you can count on.
And here's the other question. Will David Wright just finally do us all a favor and retire? I love you, David, and I have nothing but the utmost respect. And I know this sounds disrespectful to you, but considering it's taking you so long with your rehabilitation, please, for your own sake, for your health, for your family, whatever family you have left in this world, or your wife, whoever that you consider your family or your loved ones, do them a favor as well. Don't put them through this agita. Just retire and work in the front office, maybe as a first base or a third base coach.
It's funny you mention that because we have not mentioned the most important news in regards to the Mets, and that's the fact that Terry Collins is now without a job.
But he's in the front office. I think that was a very, you know what, I'll be honest too, me and some other, we thought it was very dignified the way the Mets went about it too, to keep him at least around the organization.
To be quite honest with you, I kind of wish that the guy had deserved a little bit better. Were things going progressively worse for him when he was on the bench? Yes. But at the same time, do not disrespect the man and don't treat him like an idiot. You would not believe all of the so-called anonymous quotes that were going around. Nothing but derogatory comments being made about Terry Collins. The fact that he was losing the locker room and that he was favoring veterans over younger players and that he was too chummy with the owner. I mean, it's he said. Whether this happened or not, who knows the real story?
It's disrespectful, though.
You can't do that to the guy. Terry Collins has had a long, long career in baseball. Has he had his problems with the Mets and the Angels and the Astros when he was managing? Yes. At the same time, don't kick a man when he's down, especially emotionally.
And look at, despite he's the longest tenured Mets coach in history for 7 years.
And that's saying a lot considering 7 years, 5 times, his teams were under 500.
And
anybody else, that they would have been fired maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
And we're talking about guys like Willie Randolph, who's managing this team. Davey Johnson at one point we had.
Davey Johnson is still the winningest manager in Mets history.
Gil Hodges. You had, of course, the first ever, the professor, Casey Stengel.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Bobby Valentine managed the Mets for 6+ years.
Including the famous mustache game.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite still to this day.
Yep. Unfortunately, even with all of the success that
Yogi
Bobby
Berra.
had, Bobby was never well liked by any of the players on the Mets. Maybe by David Wright a little bit. But then again, David Wright is such a respected guy in the clubhouse. Naturally, he's going to have the managers back, whether it was Bobby Valentine or Terry Collins. And let me tell you, David Wright really defended Terry Collins the other day. He said his locker is 15 feet away from the manager's office, and that if anybody had a problem with Terry Collins, all they had to do was go into his office and talk about it behind closed doors. And no one ever talked about wanting to share their gripes with him. All they ever talked about was how they were miserable and how he would not acknowledge anybody unless their name was Matt Harvey or Yoenis Cespedes.
I think that's hogwash, honestly. Because to me, Terry Collins seems to me like the type of guy, he's a man's man.
Yeah.
Where if you had a problem with him or he had a problem with you, you would settle it, in a very dignified, professional way, like David Wright mentioned, behind closed doors and hash it out. He's not the type of guy that wouldn't give you the time of day, I believe. As for the future of the Mets managerial position, and also the Phillies, McCann is no longer going to be with them. But for the Mets, I'm hearing stories about Kevin Long or Robin Ventura emerging as front runners for this managerial position.
And I've also heard that Dan Worthen is not going to be brought back as the pitching coach. And Dan Worthen had almost 10 years as the Mets pitching coach, and he's going to be getting his walking papers.
He was promoted from within the minor league system at one point.
And I've also heard the names Joe McEwing and Robin Ventura. Joe McEwing actually makes a lot of sense because he's a guy who not only was a decent player, he used to play for the Mets for 4 years. Robin Ventura, who was such a great slugging third baseman and a great defensive third baseman with the White Sox and the Mets and the Yankees and the Dodgers, He didn't have a great time managing the White Sox. Of course, he was not helped that much because the White Sox are a dreadful team right now.
Well,
But
he had some controversy that deal. Remember that player and his son and all that not being allowed in the clubhouse?
Yep.
That he had to deal with that incident right there. So he's had to deal with some BS. But at the same time, he had some good players like Jose Abreu who came up during his first year in the league. So he knows how to work with some powerful young hitters, and I think he'll be able to get a lot out of Dominic Smith and Ahmed Rosario for sure. But Kevin Long had some frustrating years when he was with the Rays organization. He was formerly, I believe, with the Yankees too at one point as well. And as for Joe McEwing,
I remember when Joe McEwing played with the Mets for 4 years. Not only was he a part of their pennant-winning team in 2000, he did something that was very, very rare among any hitter. He actually hit a home run off Randy Johnson, and which is saying a lot because
that's a 100-mile-per-hour thrower right
Not
there.
only that, but there was a time when Joe McEwing was a 300 hitter against Randy Johnson, and there were very few 300 hitters against him lifetime. This begs the question, though. Who should the Mets hire as their manager? What kind of manager should the Mets hire? And also, should the Mets go with predominantly young players next year and down the road, or should they take a win-now approach and bring in some more veterans?
I think they need to do a combination of, they need to build up. They need to get some production. This is going to be a rebuilding team. I can't lie. I wish I could say it's a win-now situation, but this is a rebuilding team. But maybe they need to get somebody who's young, a shrewd person, diligent, professional, somebody who can deal with all the personalities, especially a guy like Matt Harvey, if he's even still on the team, and somebody who will get a better medical staff than the one the Mets have, because the medical staff, honestly, have dropped the ball with this pitching squad.
Amazing.
So they need to get somebody who can deal with all the personalities, who can also thrive or deal with the New York media, because the New York media, along with Chicago and L.A., are the tough, and Philadelphia, are the toughest media markets in the country to deal with. And if you succeed, especially, the old saying, the old song, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, thanks to Blue Eyes. It's true. If you can really do a good job in New York, you really can make it anywhere. And if you don't make it here, the papers in New York, especially the Daily News,
they're going to turn on him.
They're going to crucify him. So
it's funny that you mention the medical staff, because Noah Syndergaard missed a huge chunk of the season. Did you know that before his injury, he refused to get an MRI on his shoulder? All and out, turned it down. And look what happened to him. At the same time, you can blame the medical staff for their mistakes, but when you have hard-headed pitchers like Matt Harvey and Noah Syndergaard basically dictating stuff, it's hard to try and make these guys cooperate.
No, they need to send out and say, hey, you may be the professional making $1 million, but I'm a trained professional doctor. And when I'm telling you from all the medical degrees and all the classes that I took that your arm is basically not at 100%, you should take my advice, get yourself a damn MRI, and fix your arm. Because if you don't do this now and you wait way too late to get it done, guess what's going to happen, buddy? You're going to have another year and a half possibly taken from your career. Do you want to end up having Tommy John surgery? I sure as hell don't think you want it. So listen to my advice, young man, and get yourself, take my medical advice and get whatever procedure I want from you done. And that's it. They need to get a medical staff that will basically homer down on these pitchers, these players, and tell them, you're going to do this. And I don't care. You can kick and scream for all I give a damn, but you're going to get this done.
Lost in this whole thing is the fact that while one regular season ends,
sorry, I got passionate there, but it just pissed me off.
Another regular season is going to begin later this week, because hockey season is going to have their 101st regular season coming up.
The Rangers start this Wednesday at home against the Colorado Avalanche.
The Islanders and the Devils have their home opener against the Avalanche as well in the Rock on a Saturday. And the Islanders, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be starting their season on the road against the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Friday, and then they start their home opener on Saturday, I believe, against the Winnipeg Jets.
And basketball preseason began as of this past Sunday. And tomorrow night, the Knicks and Nets start their preseason against each other.
Well, as always, and by the way, our hearts and prayers are out to the people of Las Vegas for what took place this morning. A horrible tragedy. Let's hope that no more senseless acts of violence are ever committed again.
For everyone here, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Eric.
Good night, everyone.
Peace.